Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm working on this Nefera Denile doll. I'll be turning her into Polgara The Sorceress. I'm using these two books as reference. I begin as usual by removing all of her accessories, her clothing, cutting off all of her hair, and then using pure acetone to remove her factory face. Her arms are actually molded with that pattern, so I will be using paint to cover that since the color is wrong for the dress I'm making for her. I use my hairdryer to warm up her head after I get all her hair cut off. That way I don't have to dunk her in hot water. That helps with head removal and I don't ruin the neck peg either. I use a tool to scrape all the plugs out of her head, the inside of her head, and then use a pair of locking tweezers to pull all the gunk, gooey bits and last bits of hair out from inside her head. Once that's all done, I throw all that nastiness away, use that 100% acetone, cotton pads, and Q-tips to remove what is on her face. In case you're wondering why my finger is sticking out like that, I have hurt myself again, and I didn't want to get my finger in the acetone because that really stings. Since her head's going to be rerooted in black, I didn't really want that green showing, so that has to come off her scalp as well. Then I use a nail buffer block to take the shine off her body because I will be body blushing today as well. Once the doll's all prepped, I'm ready to reroot her head. I'll be using 100% acrylic yarn in black and white. I cut off several lengths of white that are the appropriate length. And do the same with the black. I only need a little bit of the white, as she just has that one lock of hair that is white in the reference pictures. I use my homemade rerooting tool, which is a X-Acto knife handle and a cut off needle tool, and I start by doing the white so I can get that exactly where I want it, and then I do the rest of the head in black. I wrap the piece of yarn around my two fingers, then insert the needle, and then stab the needle into her head, and repeat that about 1 billion times. I use fabric tack glue to seal all those plugs in, wait for that to dry, and then I'm ready to turn this yarn into what looks like hair. I start with this pet brush and brush the whole head, turning it back into a big fluffy mess. And then once that's all done, I take my hair straightener and straighten all the locks. And then to reattach her head, I just warm it up one more time with the hairdryer, stab it back on. I do this before the face up because Mr. Super Clear tends to crack when you try to put her reunite head and body. So I'll start in on her face using Mr. Super Clear, a couple layers of that to start with. Then I go in with this brown color to try to draw in her sketch in her facial features. I want her looking to the side, like in the reference photo, or reference book, I suppose I should say. And I'll just use this brown. If I make a mistake, I can erase it fairly easily. Black tends to leave stains, so if you mess up, it's pretty much there, unless you want to start over using acetone. I do tend to go in fairly soon and do eyebrows first. I find them less daunting if they're the only thing that's on the face already. And I give her my signature thin eyebrows. I'm not really into bushy eyebrows, and the reference photo doesn't have her with bushy eyebrows, so this seems more appropriate anyway. I use my Faber-Castell Pit Pastel water or pastel pencil for the whites of the eyes. You get massive payoff just on the first layer using a pastel pencil rather than using a watercolor pencil, and that also helps with the next few layers of watercolor pencil. It grips a little bit better to the plastic and the Mr. Super Clear. And I kind of lose the sketch, so I go back in with my brown and add those back in. I use my pan pastels in various shades for the shades and highlights and blushing of her face, her body. I'll be using the same colors. I use these makeup brushes. They're nice and soft and fluffy. Blending is so easy with them. I give her some darker shades around her temples and her ears and behind her ears and under her jaw. And then go in with a lighter shade to give her the highlights on her forehead, her nose, her tops of her cheekbones, I guess I should say. And just kind of make her look a little bit more realistic, I guess is the right word. I do the shading and highlighting a couple of times with layers of Mr. Super Clear in between. Sorry, I'm off camera there just a little bit, but I'm just basically rubbing in the body blushing. I kind of like to do both her face blushing and her body blushing at the same time. I know it looks a little rough here. Here in a minute I'll use a big fluffy brush to blend everything together. Make it look a little bit more natural and human looking, I guess is the right way to put it. And of course you see here I'm putting even more of the highlight where she would have natural highlights on her face. Just trying to make that skin tone just a little bit lighter. Polgara is she's not nearly as dark as Nefera is, so I have to bring that skin tone just a little bit brighter, a little bit less tan looking, to make it look more like my reference books there. I'm using this nice lovely red shade for the initial color on her lips. In the picture, kind of more natural looking, but I definitely wanted that bold lip to match with the bold color that her dress is going to be. And red stands out really well against blue, so that's what I'm doing. Here I'm starting finally in on her eye color with an initial layer of light purple. In the book it said that her eyes change color from pale lavender to a bold blue to even a stormy gray, and since I can't really figure out a way to make that happen where her eyes change colors, I went with a gradient instead, starting with the lightest shade of purple on the bottom, going into the darkest shade of blue at the top. And then instead of black for the rims of the iris there, I used the darkest shade of purple. which I think stands out, makes it look a little more mysterious, a little more magical maybe. After another layer of Mr. Super Clear, I do another layer of all the colors in her eyes and more white in her eyes, and basically just going over everything I've done before. I turn her upside down here. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit off camera because I turn her upside down because I can get a little better angle on the corners of her eyes. If she's upside down, I'm not sure if that's actually true, but it seems to be for me. Don't be afraid to flip your doll around and turn her this way and that way to get the better angle. Right there you see me, I'm working with a terracotta color to do the waterline on the bottom of her eyes, and then trying to give her a little bit of a highlight underneath the waterline and right above, just to make that look a little more 3D, like she actually has eyelids. And finally, when I'm getting close to the end here, I'm going to go ahead and use my black watercolor pencil to draw in the tiny little eyebrow hairs, give her the eyeliner and her lower lashes, and all those little fine details that need to be done with black. And the sharpest highlights on her nose, her upper lip, and then I use my little blending brush to blend those out, make them look a little more natural and not so harsh. And there it is with the lower eyeliner and that black pencil. And I'll actually do this particular step a couple of times with Mr. Super Clear layers. Sorry, I can't speak today. I like to give all my dolls really wispy eyelashes on the bottom lashes. And about halfway through this process, I decided that her eyes just were not as magical as I wanted them to be. So I decided to go ahead and use Pearl X powders in blue and purple and try to give her a better gradient that also is shimmery. So I've got a couple colors there and a little tiny bit of water that I'm going to mix with the Pearl X powders, and then using a tiniest brush, dab those into her eyes. So right there I'm using the purple, then I'll have a light blue and then a darker blue at the top of her eye. And I'm just using water to apply that. Once that's dry, I'll add another layer of Mr. Super Clear, and then I can do her catch lights in her eye, which I just like to do one single dot usually. Anymore just seems to obscure the carefully colored in irises. Here you see what color I'm using to paint her arms and hands. It matches fairly well with the dress color, which is what I was going for. Try to make that match really well. And like any paint, it does chip off of the joints, but that green's not too far off this blue as far as tone, I think is the right way to say it. so it's not as noticeable. If I were going something really dark or really light, then the green would be a lot more obvious. I do a couple layers of this and then seal it in with Mr. Super Clear again. And I do that several times, trying to protect the paint as much as possible. And once she's all done, here comes the catch lights with the head of a pin and just the tiniest one little dot in each eye. Again, I don't like to obscure my irises. I just like a single dot for the catch light. And once she's all complete, her outfit's ready to be put on. I used a Requiem art pattern to make the dress. The underskirt I made just using a long strip of the fabric, that sheer fabric. Her shoes are actually Claudia Wolf shoes that I repainted blue to match the dress. Added some pretty trim. And since this is a purchase pattern from Etsy, I can't show you how I made the dress because that would be a copyright infringement, I think. I did add a piece of ribbon to keep the underskirt down where it belongs instead of riding up on her. And the underskirt is just to make it so that the overdress stand out a little bit better, hang a little bit better, drape a little bit better. I'm not sure how you want to say that. I'll reattach her arms. Her cloak, I used a Celtic knotwork symbol on the back. I, did braids for the ties. And that's it. She is complete. I really hope you enjoyed my take on Polgara the Sorceress. Hopefully you've read those books by David and Lee Eddings. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!